I raised my son to be a man of honor, taught him that respect isn't given, it's earned. For 32 years, I thought he learned that lesson. Then came his wedding planning, and suddenly I wasn't his father anymore. I was just an ATM with a pulse. The final straw came at the rehearsal dinner. 80 people watched my future daughter-in-law publicly mock me for finally learning to be generous. My son laughed along. They thought they'd broken me. But I'm Barnaby Yates, and I didn't spend 40 years in corporate law to be disrespected by kids who can't read fine print. 3 days later, their world collapsed. And it was all perfectly legal. But before I tell you how this played out, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of family justice served cold. Let me take you back to how this all started. My name is Barnaby Yates. I spent 4 decades practicing corporate law in downtown Chicago. Farm boy turned city lawyer. That was my story. Built everything from nothing with these 2 hands and a sharp mind. I met my wife Catherine in law school. She had this way of seeing through people's masks. Watch their actions, not their words, she'd always say. We raised our son Marcus with simple principles: work hard, keep your word, respect what's earned. Catherine passed 5 years ago. Cancer. During her final months, she gripped my hand and whispered, "Don't let Marcus take advantage of your loneliness." I promised her I wouldn't become a pushover. I thought I'd taught him well. Marcus graduated from Northwestern, started his own consulting business. I was proud. He seemed to understand the value of earning respect through effort, not birthright. But somewhere along the way, I forgot my own first rule. Never mix family with money without documentation. The first warning came during his college years. I gave him $20,000 for his senior year expenses. A handshake agreement. He paid it back 6 months late. No apology, like I should be grateful he remembered it all. Catherine noticed. She saw the casual disrespect in his eyes. That handshake loan taught me never to trust family with money again. After Catherine's warning proved right, I changed my approach completely. No more handshake deals, no more verbal agreements. If Marcus needed financial help, everything would be documented properly. When he graduated and wanted to start his consulting business, he came to me with big plans. "Dad, I need seed money for Pinnacle Consulting. This could be huge." His eyes lit up with entrepreneurial fire. For a moment, he reminded me of myself at his age. But I'd learned my lesson. "Son, if we're doing this, we're doing it right. Legal paperwork, proper structure." Marcus rolled his eyes. "Dad, come on. It's family." Especially because it's family. I drafted a comprehensive business loan agreement, $50,000 at market interest rate payment schedule, default clauses, everything a real business relationship required. But I also included something else. Partnership papers for Pinnacle Consulting LLC, standard protection for lenders in family business arrangements. Marcus barely glanced at the 15-page document. "Just tell me where to sign, Dad. I trust you." He scrolled his signature across 7 different pages. Partnership agreement loan documents, business registration, operating agreements. That signature he scrolled so carelessly would come back to haunt him. He got his money built. His business became successful, but he never read what he'd signed, never understood what that partnership really meant. Marcus's business thrived. Pinnacle Consulting grew from a one-man operation to a team of 12. Corporate clients, government contracts, revenue hitting 6 figures annually. Success changed him. Or maybe it revealed who he'd always been. The grateful son who'd hugged me after signing those papers disappeared. In his place stood someone who spoke to me like I was an elderly uncle, tolerated but not truly respected. "Dad, you worry too much about money," he'd say, when I suggested he review our agreements annually. "The business is doing great, relax." But I'd spent 40 years reading people through legal documents. Marcus treated our partnership like a formality. He made business decisions without consulting me, hired employees without discussion, signed vendor contracts as if he owned 100%. He forgot I held 51% ownership. Then 2 years ago, he met Victoria Blackwell, marketing executive, blonde, ambitious, and calculating. I saw it immediately the way she assessed my house, my car, my clothes. She was cataloging assets before she'd learned my middle name. Victoria saw dollar signs where Marcus saw love. Marcus brought her to family dinners. She'd smile at my stories about legal cases, but her eyes stayed cold. Professional interest, not warmth. She asked pointed questions about retirement plans, property values, investment portfolios. She thought she'd landed a rich man's son. She had no idea the rich man still held all the cards. Victoria's influence over Marcus became obvious within months. Suddenly, my successful son developed expensive tastes. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, a BMW he couldn't actually afford on his business income. "Where's this money coming from?" I asked during one of our quarterly business reviews. Marcus waved dismissively. "Business is good, Dad. We're expanding." But I had access to the business accounts. Revenue was solid, not spectacular. The expensive lifestyle was coming from somewhere else. Credit cards, probably. Debt he was hiding. Victoria started making comments about my frugal lifestyle. How I still drove my 10-year-old Honda. How I bought clothes at department stores instead of boutiques. "Barnaby," she'd say with that condescending smile, "you've earned the right to enjoy your money. Stop being so careful with every dollar." Marcus began echoing her words. "Dad, you can't take it with you. Live a little." They didn't understand. I wasn't hoarding money. I was preserving principles. Money earned through discipline shouldn't be spent through impulse. Then came the engagement announcement. Marcus called me on a Tuesday evening, voice bright with excitement. "Dad," I proposed. Victoria said yes. I offered congratulations, but my stomach tightened. I'd seen this pattern before in legal practice. Ambitious spouse, wealthy family, expensive expectations. "We're thinking about a destination wedding," Marcus continued. Something elegant, sophisticated. She thought she'd married into easy money. She was about to discover how expensive sophistication could be. Wedding planning revealed Victoria's true character immediately. She approached marriage like a corporate acquisition. Spreadsheets detailing venue costs, vendor comparisons, budget projections that made my legal documents look simple. "Barnaby, we need to discuss the wedding budget," she announced at our first planning meeting. Not asked announced like I was an employee receiving instructions. "What did you have in mind?" I kept my voice neutral. Victoria slid a folder across my dining room table. Professional presentation, glossy photos, itemized expenses totaling $1.2 million. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Victoria, we talked about keeping it reasonable." "This is reasonable for a family of our status," she replied coolly. "Barnaby's worked hard his whole life. This wedding is an investment in our family's reputation." She'd calculated every detail. Venue, $400,000, catering, $300,000, photography, flowers, music, transportation, all premium pricing. All expecting my bank account to cover the difference between their dreams and their reality. "It's a significant amount," I said carefully. Victoria leaned forward. "But think about it, Barnaby. You're retiring. No major expenses, no other children to support. This is Marcus's big moment. Shouldn't a father want to give his son the wedding of his dreams?" Marcus nodded eagerly. He'd been completely seduced by her vision. I agreed to fund their wedding, but not as a gift, as a loan with proper documentation, with terms and conditions they didn't bother reading. He signed without reading again. The wedding loan documents were more comprehensive than anything I drafted in private practice. $1.22 million fixed repayment schedule, personal guarantees, default clauses that would activate if respect and dignity weren't maintained. Marcus signed cheerfully. "Thanks, Dad. This means everything to us." Victoria kissed my cheek. "You're being so generous, Barnaby." But they weren't reading the fine print. The loan was secured against Marcus's business assets, his personal property, and it included a moral clause language protecting lenders against character-based defaults. I also opened a business credit account for wedding expenses, guaranteed by me, but ultimately Marcus's responsibility. Every dress fitting, every cake tasting, every deposit and payment would be documented. They thought they were spending my money. They were actually spending their money. They just didn't know it yet. The credit card bills started arriving immediately. Venue deposits $15,000, catering advance $20,000, photography package $12,000, each charge appearing on statements that arrived at my address. "The business card is so convenient," Victoria told me over dinner. "We can track everything for tax purposes." Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "It keeps our personal and wedding expenses separate." They were spending my money and calling me cheap, but every dollar they charged created a paper trail. Every signature they made increased their liability. Every casual swipe of that business card that there was another link in the legal chain I was quietly forging. They thought they were living their dream wedding. I was documenting their nightmare. Wedding planning consumed the next 8 months. Victoria approached every detail like a military campaign: 3 different venue visits, tastings at 12 catering companies, dress fittings that required my business credit card because family weddings deserve family support. But their attitude toward me shifted completely. I wasn't the generous father funding their dreams. I was the old man whose money they'd finally learned to access. "Barnaby, we've decided to seat you at the family table instead of the head table," Victoria announced during one planning session. "We want our wedding party to feel special." Marcus didn't object. Didn't defend his father's place of honor. Just nodded like this was reasonable protocol. The credit card bills kept growing. Flowers $8,000, transportation $6,000, wedding favors that cost more than most people's entire weddings $4,000. Each expense justified as necessary for the image we're presenting. My business account showed charges in 43 different states. Destination bachelor party in Las Vegas, bachelorette party in Miami, engagement party that required flying in Victoria's college friends from California. They weren't planning a wedding. They were planning a 6-month luxury vacation funded by my guarantees and secured by assets they'd forgotten they'd signed over. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was the disrespect. "Dad, you worry too much about details," Marcus said when I asked about the mounting expenses. "Trust us, we've got everything under control." They weren't planning a future with me in it. They were planning a future with my money in it. The first real escalation came at Thanksgiving dinner 6 months before the wedding. Family gathered around my dining room table. Marcus's cousins, my brother, and his wife Victoria's parents visiting from Connecticut. Victoria was holding court describing wedding plans in elaborate detailed designer dress that cost more than my first car honeymoon in Europe that would require 3 weeks off work reception menu featuring ingredients I couldn't pronounce. "Barnaby's been so supportive," she told the gathered family. "It's wonderful when people learn to be less careful with their resources." The word careful dripped with condescension. My brother's eyebrows raised. He'd known me for 62 years, knew I'd never been careless with money, only thoughtful. But Victoria's tone suggested character improvement was happening. Marcus laughed along. "Dad's definitely loosened up since retirement. Sometimes it takes family to teach us generosity," Victoria added, cutting her turkey with surgical precision. I felt heat climbing my neck, the casual dismissal, the subtle mockery, the implication that my lifetime of financial discipline had been some character flaw that family intervention was finally correcting. Other family members shifted uncomfortably. They could hear the disrespect too. They weren't just taking my money anymore. They were publicly rewriting the narrative, making me the beneficiary of their guidance instead of the provider of their luxuries. After dinner, my brother pulled me aside. Barn you hearing what they're saying about you. They weren't planning a future with me in it. They were rewriting our past to justify their entitlement. 3 months before the wedding, Marcus called with news that shouldn't have surprised me. Dad, we've run into some additional expenses. The venue required upgraded insurance. Victoria's dress needed custom alterations. We're about $15,000 over budget. $15,000 like it was pocket change. Like my retirement savings was a community resource that naturally expanded to accommodate their poor planning. Son, we agreed on a specific amount, I know. But these are unavoidable costs. The wedding's already planned, deposits are paid. We can't change anything now. The manipulation was obvious. Create circumstances that made saying no seem unreasonable. Leverage social pressure and family loyalty against financial boundaries. Just put it on the business card, Dad. We'll sort it out after the honeymoon. I agreed, but I also started reviewing every document Marcus had signed over the years. Partnership agreements, loan paperwork, credit applications, business registrations. 40 years of law practice taught me to prepare for war. Marcus had given me weapons he didn't remember forging. The business credit card showed additional charges immediately. Bachelor party upgrades, last-minute guest accommodations, wedding favors that cost more than most people's monthly rent. But the real breaking point came when Victoria called with her final demand. Barnaby, we've decided Marcus should have his inheritance early. You know, to start our marriage with financial security. Nothing dramatic, just $200,000 or $300,000 to get us established properly. That's when I realized they saw me as an ATM with a pulse. Time to change that perception permanently. The inheritance conversation happened in my study 2 weeks before the wedding. Marcus and Victoria sat across from my desk like they were presenting a business proposal. Dad, we've been thinking about our financial future, Marcus began. Starting a marriage with debt doesn't seem wise. Victoria leaned forward. We're not asking for charity, just early access to money that will eventually be Marcus. Anyway, eventually being the operative word. They were discussing my death like a scheduled appointment. What amount were you thinking? I asked that. $300,000 would cover the wedding overruns and give us a solid foundation, Victoria replied promptly. She'd already done the math. Marcus nodded. It would let us pay everything off and start fresh. I looked at my son, 32 years old, successful business, healthy income, but he was sitting in my study asking for money he hadn't earned because waiting for natural inheritance was inconvenient. I'll need to think about this, I said. Victoria's smile tightened. Barnaby? We're not asking you to impoverish yourself. Just share what you've already decided Marcus will inherit. Think of it as a gift to both of us. Either you support us properly, or she let the sentence hang. Marcus didn't object to her ultimatum, didn't defend his father against his fiancée's manipulation, just sat there nodding like her demands were reasonable. That's when I realized they saw me as an ATM with a pulse. Not a father, not a man deserving respect, just a withdrawal mechanism that occasionally required social pleasantries. The bachelor party happened 3 weeks before the wedding, Las Vegas naturally. Victoria had insisted Marcus celebrate properly with his college friends. 27 charges appeared on my business credit card over one weekend. Restaurants I'd never heard of, nightclubs that charged admission fees higher than my monthly utilities, a VIP package at some casino that cost $8,000. Marcus called me Sunday night, voice slurred with exhaustion and alcohol. Dad, amazing weekend. The guys loved it. Victoria was right, I needed this. Son, I'm looking at the credit card charges. Oh, that. Yeah, we went a little over budget. But it's my bachelor party. You know, once in a lifetime experience. $8,000 for one night. More than some families spend on entire vacations, charged to my business account. Like it was a routine office expense. Marcus, we need to discuss these charges. Dad, relax. It's basically your money anyway, right? The business. The credit cards, everything. We're not strangers here. His casual dismissal cut through me like cold steel. He wasn't even pretending to respect boundaries anymore. My assets had become his assumptions. "We'll talk about this when you get back," I said. "Sure, sure. But don't stress about money, Dad. You've got plenty. 40 years of law practice taught me to prepare for war. And Marcus had just declared it. I spent the next 3 days reviewing every document he'd ever signed: partnership agreements, loan papers, credit applications, business registrations. He'd armed me beautifully. The final escalation came 1 week before the wedding. Marcus called with his most audacious request yet. "Dad, we need another advance. Final payments are due and we're short about $20,000. $20,000. On top of the original $1.2 million, on top of the $15,000 unavoidable expenses, on top of the $8,000 Las Vegas weekend. My retirement savings weren't unlimited." But Marcus spoke like they were. "Son, where's this money going?" "Wedding stuff, Dad. Final payments, last-minute details. You know how these things work." "Actually, I don't. I've never spent $20,000 on last-minute details." Marcus's tone shifted to irritation. "Dad, we've been over this. The wedding's happening. The vendors need payment. We can't change anything now. What about your business income, your savings?" "Those are tied up in growth investments. Come on, Dad. This is my wedding. Your only son's wedding. Don't you want it to be special?" The manipulation was expert. Emotional leverage, guilt, induction, social pressure, all designed to make financial boundaries seem like personal rejection. I told him I'd think about it. I was thinking about 40 years of corporate law, about contracts signed in haste, about partnership agreements that granted majority control, about the difference between gifts and documented loans. I was thinking about credit card guarantees and business asset seizures and default clauses that could be activated by moral violations. Marcus thought I was considering his request. I was calculating his total debt. The rehearsal dinner arrived like a scheduled execution. 80 guests gathered at the Riverside Country Club. Victoria's choice, naturally. Elegant venue overlooking the Chicago River. Each table setting costs more than most people spend on entire dinners. I arrived early, checking the seating arrangements. My name appeared on a small card at table 7 back corner, next to Victoria's great aunt, who suffered from mild dementia. Not at the head table with immediate family, not even at a prominent family table. I was seated like a distant relative whose attendance was tolerated, not celebrated. Marcus worked the room in his tailored tuxedo, accepting congratulations like a visiting celebrity. Victoria glided between tables in her rehearsal dress, a creation that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. The credit card bills were in my briefcase. 43 different charges over the last month. Florist consultations in 3 states, cake tastings that required flying and specialists from New York, photography sessions that cost more than most people's cars, every dollar documented, every signature recorded, every casual swipe creating legal liability they'd forgotten they'd assumed. Guests asked me about my generosity. Throughout cocktail hour, Victoria had been talking, apparently spreading word about how supportive I'd become, how I'd finally learned to prioritize family over financial caution. "Barnaby's really stepped up," I heard Victoria tell a group of her friends. "Sometimes it takes the right influence to help people grow." The right influence, like my 62 years of life experience, had been incomplete until her 28-year-old wisdom provided course correction. Marcus nodded along with every comment, laughing at jokes about my previous tightness, with money agreeing that Victoria had taught our family valuable lessons about generosity. The heat in my chest began building, slow burn of recognition and wounded dignity. They weren't celebrating our family. They were celebrating my conversion to their financial philosophy. Then Victoria stood up with her champagne glass raised. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, Victoria, began her voice carrying across the dining room with practiced confidence. Marcus and I are surrounded by love and support, polite applause. 80 faces turned toward the head table where my son and his fiancée stood like royalty addressing subjects. But I have special thanks for someone who's made this wedding possible. Victoria continued, her eyes finding mine across the crowded room. Barnaby Yates has shown us what true generosity looks like. More applause, louder this time. Guests turning to locate me at my back corner table. It's wonderful when older people can grow and change, Victoria said, her smile bright and condescending. Barnaby has finally learned to be generous, to put family before financial worry, to trust that love is more important than ledger books. The applause became enthusiastic guests, nodding approval at the heartwarming story of an old man's character development. Marcus raised his own glass to Dad for finally understanding what family really means. My throat constricted. The public humiliation was surgical precise, designed to elevate their wisdom while diminishing my lifetime of financial discipline. 80 people witnessing my transformation from stingy old man to properly guided family patriarch. My values reframed as character flaws that their intervention had corrected. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, the familiar burn of injustice that had driven my legal career. But this time it was personal family. My own son participating in my public diminishment. Victoria lifted her champagne higher. Thank you, Barnaby, for finally learning to be generous. The room erupted in sustained applause, guests raising their glasses toward my corner table, celebrating my alleged growth, my apparent evolution from selfish to supportive. The room was silent, waiting for my response. I smiled and nodded like the grateful old fool they thought I was. But inside, my mind was shifting into lawyer mode. 40 years of corporate law activated. Document review, contract analysis, asset evaluation. They thought they'd won. They had no idea I was calculating interest. I raised my own glass with steady hands, stood slowly, letting the room's attention settle completely on me. 80 faces watching expectantly. Thank you, Victoria, for those kind words, I said, my voice carrying the measured tone I'd perfected in 40 years of legal practice. And thank you all for sharing this special evening with our family. I paused, letting silence stretch just long enough to command complete attention. I've learned many things over the years about family, about love, about respect. My eyes found Marcus across the room, and about the importance of reading what you sign. A few guests chuckled, thinking I was making a lawyer joke. Tonight has been enlightening. I continued watching two people I love plan their future together, seeing their dreams take shape, understanding exactly what they value most. Victoria's smile faltered slightly. Something in my tone wasn't matching her script. I wish Marcus and Victoria every happiness they deserve, I said, emphasizing deserve just enough to plant a seed of uncertainty. And I look forward to seeing how their partnership develops. I sat down to polite applause, but the energy had shifted. My response was too controlled, too careful. Guests sensed undercurrents they couldn't identify. Victoria quickly redirected attention to the meal service, but she kept glancing at me throughout dinner. Marcus looked confused but relieved that I hadn't made a scene. They thought I'd accepted their narrative, embraced my role as the reformed miser who'd finally learned proper family values. But I'd spent 40 years reading people through their legal vulnerabilities. Tonight I'd read theirs perfectly. The credit cards, the partnership papers, the loan agreements, the business registrations, every document Marcus had signed without reading was about to become my weapon. Now here's my question for you. Have you ever been publicly disrespected by family? What would you do in my situation? Let me know in the comments below. As guests enjoyed their 8-course dinner, I was mentally drafting termination notices. I drove home in complete silence. No radio, no phone calls, just the hum of tires on asphalt and the methodical clicking of my turn signals. My study waited like an old friend. Leather chair, reading lamp, wall-to-wall law books, collected over 4 decades of practice. This room had witnessed contract negotiations worth hundreds of millions, merger agreements that created corporate empires, legal strategies that had built and destroyed careers. Tonight it would witness something more personal. I opened my fireproof filing cabinet with hands that weren't shaking. 40 years of legal training had taught me emotional control. Personal feelings were irrelevant when business needed handling. The Marcus folder was 3 and thick. Partnership agreements, loan documents, credit applications, business registrations, insurance policies, every piece of paper he'd signed since starting Pinnacle Consulting. I spread the documents across my desk like a general reviewing battlefield maps. The partnership agreement was beautiful. 15 pages of legal precision. Marcus owned 49% of Pinnacle Consulting LLC. I owned 51%. Voting control management authority, asset disposition, rights all mine. Marcus had read none of it, just signed where I'd indicated. Trusted his father completely. The wedding loan documents were equally comprehensive. $1.2 million immediate acceleration clauses, default triggers that included failure to maintain respectful family relationships. Language I'd crafted carefully, every signature told a story. The business credit cards were guaranteed by me, but ultimately Marcus's responsibility. 43 charges totaling $87,000 in wedding expenses. All documented, all recoverable. 40 years of law practice had prepared me for this moment. Marcus thought he was planning a wedding. I realized he'd been building his own legal trap. The beauty of proper documentation reveals itself in moments like these. Every contract tells 2 stories: what people think they signed and what they actually signed. Marcus thought he'd signed business registration papers, standard paperwork for a new LLC, routine formalities that would let him operate as Pinnacle Consulting. What he'd actually signed was a comprehensive partnership agreement granting me 51% ownership management control asset disposition authority dissolution rights. He'd given me the keys to everything he thought he owned. The loan documents were equally revealing. Marcus thought he'd received wedding funding as a family gift. Generous father supporting his son's happiness. What he'd actually received was a documented loan with acceleration clauses, default triggers, personal guarantees secured by business assets and personal property. The business credit cards completed the picture. Marcus thought he was using my money for wedding expenses. Generous father covering costs he could easily afford. What he'd actually done was create personal liability for charges that would transfer to him immediately upon my withdrawal as guarantor. $87,000 in wedding charges. $1.2 million in wedding loans. Business assets worth approximately $400,000. Personal assets, including his house cars and investment accounts. Total exposure nearly $2 million. Marcus had trapped himself beautifully. Every signature he'd made without reading had created another legal obligation. Every casual assumption about Dad's money had actually been borrowing against his own future. The moral clause in the wedding loan was particularly elegant. Failure to maintain respectful family relationships constituted default. Immediate acceleration, full balance due. Tonight's rehearsal dinner had triggered that clause perfectly. He'd given me the keys to everything he thought he owned, and I still had one more call to make. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, the good bottle Catherine had bought me for our 30th anniversary, and picked up my phone. Margaret Chen had been my paralegal for 22 years. Retired now, but we stayed in touch. More importantly, she maintained relationships with every major law firm in Chicago. Barnaby, it's nearly midnight. Everything okay, Margaret? I need a favor. Professional consultation off the record. Of course. What do you need? Asset protection and contract enforcement. Family business situation that's become complicated. Margaret's tone sharpened with interest. What kind of complications? I explained the partnership structure, the loan agreements, the credit card guarantees, the moral clause, violations. Margaret listened without interruption. Old habits from our working relationship. Jesus Barnaby, you built a legal mousetrap. Accidentally but effectively. What's your timeline? Monday morning, I make the first move. Full activation of all protective clauses. Asset freeze, loan acceleration, credit guarantee withdrawal. You'll need current legal representation. I can make some calls. I'd appreciate that, Barnaby. Margaret paused. Are you sure about this? Family relationships don't heal easily? I thought about tonight's rehearsal dinner. Victoria's public mockery. Marcus's laughter. 80 people witnessing my humiliation while celebrating their financial wisdom. Margaret, they made their choice. They chose disrespect over relationship, money over family. I'm just honoring their priorities. Understood. I'll have names and numbers by morning. Monday morning, I made the first call. But first, I needed to sleep. Strange thing about betrayal. Once you accept it completely, peace follows. No more hoping for change. No more enabling bad behavior. Just natural consequences. Doing what hope couldn't accomplish. Monday morning arrived clear and cold. Chicago in March. Still shaking off winter, but promising spring. I'd slept better than I had in months. Clarity brings rest. My first call was to First National Bank Business Division. 40 years of corporate law had taught me the importance of controlling financial access during disputes. This is Barnaby Yates. I need to invoke majority ownership rights for Pinnacle Consulting LLC. Account number 7789421. The business manager's voice became formal immediately. Mr. Yates, that will require documentation review and signature verification. Can you come in this morning? I'll be there at 10:00. Second call went to Margaret Chen's recommended attorney, David Walsh. Corporate law specialist with 28 years experience. Perfect for my needs. Mr. Walsh? Margaret Chen referred me. I need immediate representation for contract enforcement and asset protection. Can you be here at 1:00? Bring all relevant documentation. Third call was the most satisfying. Marcus's personal cell phone. Dad, what's up? Victoria and I are meeting with the caterer about final menu changes. Son, we need to talk. Business matters that require immediate attention. Dad, whatever it is, can it wait until after the wedding? We're really swamped with last-minute details. Marcus, I'm activating majority ownership provisions for Pinnacle Consulting. Effective immediately, all business accounts are frozen, pending management review. Silence on the other end. Long, stretching silence. Dad, what are you talking about? What majority ownership? The partnership agreement you signed 3 years ago. The one you didn't read. That was just the beginning. By noon, Marcus would understand exactly what he'd signed away. The banking meeting lasted 45 minutes. Documentation, review, signature verification, legal confirmation of my 51% ownership stake in Pinnacle Consulting LLC. Mr. Yates, you have full authority to freeze accounts. Review transactions and approve business expenditures, the manager confirmed. However, this will immediately halt all business operations. Understood. Please also note that I'm withdrawing personal guarantees for business credit cards effective immediately. Future charges become the responsibility of the 49% partner. That will require separate paperwork. I brought everything. While I was signing account control documents, my phone was buzzing constantly. Marcus calling, texting, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. Dad, pick up. The caterer can't process payment. Something's wrong with our accounts. Dad, seriously, call me back. Victoria's freaking out about the venue deposit. Dad, call me now. I let him panic. 40 years of legal practice had taught me that immediate responses dilute negotiating power. Let consequences establish their weight before offering explanations. At Walsh's office, I spread Marcus's signed documents across a conference table, partnership, agreements, loan papers, credit applications, business registrations. Walsh studied each page carefully. Mr. Yates, this is comprehensive asset protection. Your son essentially signed minority ownership of his own business. He trusted family. That trust is going to be expensive. Victoria's face went white when she read the papers. The legal notices were delivered by courier to Pinnacle Consulting's business address. Marcus would find them when he arrived to discover his accounts frozen and his credit cards declined. Marcus's call came at 2:30 Monday afternoon, voice tight with panic and confusion. Dad, what the hell is happening? Our accounts are frozen. The credit cards aren't working. Vendors are calling, asking about payment delays. Son, I think we need to meet. Meet Dad. Our wedding is in 5 days. Then you'd better come over quickly. Marcus and Victoria arrived within an hour. Victoria's perfectly composed mask had cracked completely. Marcus looked like he'd aged 5 years since breakfast. They sat in my living room like defendants awaiting sentencing. Dad, explain what's happening, Marcus demanded. I placed copies of his signed documents on the coffee table, partnership agreements, loan papers, business registrations, credit applications. You signed these, Marcus, all of them without reading them. Victoria grabbed the partnership agreement, scanning frantically. This says Barnaby owns 51% of your business. I know. You knew. You knew your father owned your business, and you never told me. Marcus's face flushed. I trusted Dad. It was family money. I thought you thought wrong, Victoria snapped. Then she turned to me with tears in her eyes. Barnaby, please. I'm sorry about what I said Saturday night. I was nervous, trying to be gracious. I didn't mean to offend you. Their apologies were 48 hours too late. This isn't about Saturday night, I said calmly. This is about 3 years of disrespect, financial assumptions, casual entitlement, taking my support for granted while treating me like a burden. Marcus started to protest, but Victoria cut him off. What do you want? Money. We can pay you back. I don't want your money, I said calmly. I want my money. The money you borrowed and forgot you borrowed. I opened my briefcase and removed the financial summary Walsh's office had prepared. Wedding loan, $1.2 million, business credit charges, $87,000. Partnership dissolution value, approximately $400,000. Victoria's face went ashen. Partnership dissolution. I'm exercising my majority ownership rights. Pinnacle Consulting LLC will be liquidated, assets sold, proceeds distributed according to ownership percentages. Marcus leaned forward desperately. Dad, the business is our livelihood. Our employees depend on us. You can't just destroy it. I'm not destroying it. I'm claiming my legal ownership. Something I should have done when you stopped consulting me about business decisions. Victoria tried a different approach. Barnaby, we understand you're upset, but surely we can work something out. Some kind of payment plan. The wedding expenses are non-negotiable. Venue deposits, catering advances, photography packages, all charged to business credit cards that I guaranteed. When I withdraw my guarantees, those become your personal responsibility. I handed them the calculation sheet. Total immediate liability, $87,000 or else, plus the accelerated wedding loan, plus your share of business liquidation costs. They were losing everything they never actually owned. Marcus stared at the numbers. Dad, we don't have this kind of money. Then perhaps you shouldn't have spent it. Victoria's tears had turned into something harder. This is about revenge. You're punishing us for one dinner speech. I'm enforcing contracts you signed, nothing more. The strangest thing happened as I watched their world collapse. No anger, no satisfaction, no emotional investment at all. Just natural consequences, following documented agreements. Dad, please. Marcus begged. "We can fix this. We can change how we communicate." Victoria didn't mean to sound condescending. "Marcus, this isn't about communication. It's about respect. And respect can't be negotiated after it's been lost." Victoria tried one final manipulation. "Think about what this will do to the family, your reputation in the community. People will say you destroyed your son's life over wedding expenses. People will say, I enforced legal agreements that my son signed but didn't read. Nothing more?" I stood up, signaling the meeting was over. "The business accounts will remain frozen until asset liquidation's complete. The wedding loan is immediately due. The credit card guarantees are withdrawn as of this morning." Marcus grabbed my arm. "Dad, wait. What if we called off the wedding, returned everything we could? Would that change anything?" For a moment I saw my little boy again. The kid who'd helped me rake leaves every autumn, who'd sat in my law office coloring while I worked late, who'd hugged me after Catherine's funeral and promised we'd take care of each other. But that little boy was gone, replaced by a man who'd laughed at his father's public humiliation. I wasn't punishing them. I was setting them free. Free from my financial support. Free from family obligations they clearly resented. Free to build their own lives with their own resources. The contracts speak for themselves, son. Tuesday morning, I called my realtor. The house Catherine and I had shared for 38 years needed new owners. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2-car garage on a quarter-acre lot. Perfect for a young family starting their journey like Marcus and Victoria. If they ever learned to finance their own dreams, the market was strong. Contemporary buyers would appreciate the updated kitchen and hardwood floors. I'd receive enough equity to fund a comfortable retirement somewhere warm and quiet. Arizona called to me. Desert Air Mountain views retirement communities where playing cards mattered more than portfolio balances, where relationships were built on shared interests, not family obligations. I packed methodically. 40 years of legal documents went into storage. Catherine's jewelry and photo albums went to my niece. Furniture and household goods would sell with the house. Everything I truly needed fit into 2 suitcases and a carry-on bag. Strange how little space a life requires when you stop carrying other people's expectations. Marcus called every day that week, voicemails growing increasingly desperate. "Dad, please call me back. We need to talk. I'm sorry. Victoria's sorry. We can fix this." But some things can't be fixed through apologies. Some consequences need to complete their natural cycle. The wedding was canceled Wednesday. Venue deposits forfeited. Catering contracts broken. Photography packages abandoned. 80 guests receiving last-minute notifications that the celebration was postponed indefinitely. 3 days after I left Chicago, the calls started coming, but I'd moved beyond their reach physically and emotionally. The phone number was new. The address was private. The bank accounts were in a different state. Freedom weighs nothing when you stop carrying other people's problems. Scottsdale, Arizona became my new home. Desert Sunrise apartment complex designed for active seniors. Pool, tennis court, library, and walking trails winding through cactus gardens. My neighbors were teachers, engineers, small business owners, people who'd worked hard their whole lives and saved for retirement. No one cared about my previous legal career or my family situation. Fresh starts are democracy's greatest gift. The voicemails from Marcus continued for 3 weeks. Anger bargaining promises the threats to involve other family members in our misunderstanding. Victoria's text messages were more strategic appeals to guilt. References to grandchildren I'd never meet. Calculated emotional manipulation that might have worked 6 months ago. I changed my phone number. The business liquidation proceeded automatically through Walsh's office. Pinnacle Consulting's client contracts were sold to a competitor. Office equipment, computers, and furniture were auctioned. Remaining assets were distributed according to ownership percentages. Marcus received 49% of very little. After legal fees, dissolution costs, and outstanding debts, his share totaled approximately $37,000. Enough to make a down payment on a modest apartment, not enough to maintain the lifestyle Victoria expected. The wedding expenses became their personal responsibility when my credit guarantees were withdrawn. $87,000 in charges that couldn't be returned or canceled. Marcus was forced to declare personal bankruptcy within 8 weeks. But I had one more gift to give them. A lesson that would outlast any financial consequences. A reminder that respect isn't negotiable, and family relationships have terms and conditions like any other contract. The letter was already written, 2 sentences perfectly crafted, waiting for the right moment to be delivered. Asset liquidation completed in 45 days. Legal paperwork filed with Cook County. Business dissolution recorded with Illinois Secretary of State. All contracts properly terminated. Total recovery $2.1 million, wedding loan repayment business credit charges, and my share of liquidated assets. Every dollar documented, every transaction, legal, every consequence earned. Walsh's office handled the final distributions efficiently. Marcus received his 49% share of business assets, after legal fees and dissolution costs approximately $37,000. Victoria's family money lasted 3 months. Her Connecticut parents had provided emergency funding to cover immediate wedding expenses and security deposits for a smaller apartment, but their patience expired when Marcus couldn't find employment quickly enough to repay their advance. The engagement ended 6 weeks after the business liquidation. Victoria returned to Connecticut. Marcus moved into a studio apartment above a pizza shop. He was learning to live within his means for the first time since college. But the most important lesson was still coming. The letter that would complete his education about contracts, consequences, and the difference between gifts and loans. I wrote it on simple stationery, no law firm letterhead, no formal legal language, just 2 sentences that captured 40 years of professional experience and personal disappointment. Love without respect is just enabling. Consider this your graduation from my wallet. Enclosed were copies of every document he'd signed without reading. Partnership agreements, loan papers, business registrations, credit applications, the evidence of trust given and respect abandoned. The letter was already written. Tomorrow it would be mailed to his new address above the pizza shop. Then my obligation to his education would be complete. Marcus found employment selling insurance, entry-level position with a small agency that specialized in auto and homeowner policies, 40-hour weeks, modest salary commission opportunities that required building client relationships through honest work. The entitled consultant who'd casually spent $87,000 on wedding expenses was learning to earn $40 in commission per policy sale. Victoria's departure was swift and surgical. She moved back to Connecticut 2 days after their engagement ended. No forwarding address from Marcus. No promise to stay in touch. No pretense that their relationship had been about anything beyond financial security. Her social media profiles quickly reflected new priorities. Photos with different men, expensive restaurants that Marcus couldn't afford, vacation destinations that required trust funds, not insurance commissions. Money had been the foundation of their love. When the money disappeared, so did Victoria. Marcus's credit score plummeted after the bankruptcy filing. He couldn't qualify for car loans, apartment rentals, or business credit. The casual financial assumptions of his privileged adulthood were permanently shattered. He was learning to live like most Americans, paycheck to paycheck, budgeting carefully, saving slowly. His former Pinnacle consulting clients occasionally called his old number, which now rang to a disconnected message. Some tried to find him through mutual contacts. A few expressed interest in hiring him independently. But Marcus couldn't afford office space business insurance or the equipment needed to restart his consulting practice. His business had been his only significant asset, and that was gone. Money had been the foundation of their love. Recovery would require years of discipline he'd never needed to develop. But maybe struggle would teach him what money hadn't. Marcus's first genuine apology arrived 4 months later. Not a text message or voicemail, but a handwritten letter delivered to Walsh's office, his only way of reaching me since I'd changed my contact information. Dad, I understand now what you were trying to teach me about respect, about earning what you have, about reading the fine print, literally and figuratively. I was wrong about the money, wrong about Victoria, wrong about what family relationships should look like. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm learning the hard way, like you probably intended, Marcus. Simple language, no manipulation, no requests for financial assistance, just acknowledgement of mistakes and consequences. His new circumstances were teaching him lessons that prosperity had obscured. Humility, gratitude, the difference between wants and needs, the value of earning respect through character rather than inheritance. But words were cheap. Marcus had spent 32 years speaking respectfully while acting entitled. Real change required sustained behavior, not written apologies. I didn't respond to his letter. Walsh forwarded 2 more over the following months. Updates on his progress, descriptions of his new lifestyle, acknowledgments that the financial security he'd taken for granted had actually been borrowed privilege. The tone grew more mature with each letter, less self-pity, more acceptance of responsibility, genuine recognition that family relationships require mutual respect, not one-sided generosity. Words were easy. Change would be harder. But perhaps struggle was teaching him what comfort had never could. The process would take years. Rebuilding credit, reestablishing professional credibility, learning to fund his own dreams instead of expecting others to provide them. Maybe that education would stick. Extended family reactions split predictably. My brother supported my decision immediately. Barn, you did what needed doing. Kid learned the cost of disrespect. Catherine's sister was less supportive. Barnaby, families forgive. This seems harsh for a dinner party comment. It wasn't about one comment, it was about 3 years of entitlement. Marcus's cousins mostly stayed neutral, but their private conversations overheard at my nephew's wedding revealed interesting perspectives. Marcus always acted like Uncle Barnaby's money was his inheritance advance. Victoria was calculating. She assessed bank accounts before she learned middle names. Dad warned us never to mistake generosity for obligation. Marcus forgot that lesson. The broader community response was more complex. People who knew our family history generally supported my position. Those who only heard Victoria's version painted me as an unreasonable old man who'd punished love with legal technicalities. I didn't clarify misunderstandings. Truth stands on its own merits. Marcus's professional reputation suffered immediately. Corporate consulting requires client trust, and clients worry about advisors whose personal lives involve bankruptcy and public family disputes. Some former colleagues offered support. Business and family don't mix well. Sorry you had to learn that the hard way. Others maintained careful distance. Financial instability suggests poor judgment, and poor judgment questions professional competence. Respect once lost is expensive to rebuild. Marcus was discovering that career recovery requires more than talent and experience. It demands credibility, reliability, and the trust that comes from consistent character demonstration. Those qualities take years to reestablish, particularly when your last major decision involves spending other people's money without reading the contracts. The most surprising development came 8 months later. Marcus enrolled in evening law classes at DePaul University part-time program designed for working professionals. His letter to Walsh's office explained the decision. Dad always said understanding contracts protects you from bad decisions. I'm learning that lesson officially now. Maybe if I had studied law instead of assuming Dad would handle legal details, none of this would have happened. It's too late to change the past, but not too late to change the future. Evening law school, while working full-time insurance, sales, studying contracts, and business law during lunch breaks, learning about partnership agreements, loan documentation, and credit obligations he'd signed blindly 3 years earlier. The irony was beautiful. Marcus was acquiring the knowledge that could have prevented his downfall, but he was acquiring it the hard way through consequence, not privilege. His academic performance was strong. Dean's List first semester, top 10% second semester, motivated students who fund their own education typically outperform those whose parents write tuition checks. Personal responsibility changes academic priorities wonderfully. He was also learning practical lessons about money management, budgeting, textbook costs, comparing loan terms, carefully reading every agreement before signing anything. Hard-earned wisdom that comfortable people never acquire. But I still wasn't ready for reconciliation. Words and academic performance were encouraging but insufficient. Real change required years of consistent demonstration proof that lessons had become permanent character improvements, not temporary adjustments to difficult circumstances. Marcus would need to demonstrate sustained growth before family relationships could be rebuilt. Actions, not words. Years, not months. 2 years later, I'm living quietly in Arizona desert sunshine. Morning coffee on my balcony, afternoon walks through pupkid cactus gardens, evening card games with neighbors who value character over bank statements. No regrets about the decisions I made in Chicago. No second-guessing the consequences I enforced. No guilt about choosing self-respect over family obligation. The best gift I ever gave Marcus was boundaries. He's learning to live within his means, to read what he signs, to earn respect through character, instead of expecting it through inheritance, to fund his own dreams, instead of borrowing other people's resources. Those lessons will serve him better than any money I could have provided. Catherine would approve. She always said, "Love without boundaries creates monsters." Marcus needed to learn that generosity has limits, and respect isn't negotiable. But I had one final message to send. The letter arrived on simple stationery. No return address postmarked from Scottsdale. 2 sentences that Marcus would read and reread for years to come. Love without respect is just enabling. Consider this your graduation from my wallet. Attached were copies of every document he'd signed without reading partnership agreements from Pinnacle Consulting wedding loan papers, business credit applications, a complete archive of his financial assumptions and legal obligations, evidence of trust given and respect abandoned. The lesson was simple. Read what you sign, earn what you top spend. Respect who supports you. Marcus would frame that letter, eventually display it in his law office when he finally passed the bar exam and opened his own practice. A reminder: the consequences teach lessons that comfort never could. The documents told the complete story, his signature on every page, his responsibility for every consequence. Family relationships require mutual respect, not one-sided obligation. Parents who enable disrespectful behavior aren't loving their children. They're stealing opportunities for character development. Marcus needed to learn that generosity has boundaries, that respect isn't inherited, that family support comes with terms and conditions like any other contract. Those lessons will serve him better than any inheritance I could have left him. Someday, when he's built his own success through discipline and effort, we might rebuild our relationship. But it will be different. Based on mutual respect instead of financial dependency, founded on character instead of obligation, your kindness should never come at the cost of your dignity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is enforce consequences. Let natural results teach lessons that words never could. Allow struggle to build strength that comfort destroys. Sometimes love means saying goodbye.